I used to do accessibility talks. I still do, but I started doing them back as far as 2016, 2017. So about 10 years I've been doing talks with different conferences and in internal studios and stuff like that all the time. And one of the things I used to mention a lot was how much I disliked the accessibility of Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, mostly in regards to ship combat. I would often say that I felt that the controls were so complicated that my hand would turn into a claw every time I tried to be able to attempt to do any type of naval combat. And that's just with one ship, let alone 2 or 3. And that's essentially what would stop me from playing the game even further, and also kind of pushed me towards not playing games altogether. There was a period of time where I did not play any games, and I'd sold all my consoles, and Black Flag was one of the reasons why I did sell them. So when Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced was announced, and the hopes that it would be accessible, with the confirmation with Ubisoft releasing its accessibility settings for the game, I was very excited to jump in to Resynced to see if maybe the game was more accessible and my hand doesn't turn into a claw when I play it. Did they succeed? Let's find out. Hi, I'm Steve Saylor, I'm blind, and if you're wondering how I can be able to play video games if I'm blind and what I can see when I'm playing video games if I'm blind, if you take a look at the video here or click the link in the description down below, check out that video. Also, make sure to like and subscribe to be able to help grow this channel. It would really appreciate it. I really appreciate it, and thank you so much. So let's talk Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced. A long title, but it's well worth it because that title has a lot of pedigree in this industry. Black Flag is considered probably one of the best Assassin's Creed games to date. It is not only highly regarded as a great Assassin's Creed game, but it is a great pirate game in and of itself. And I was very excited when Ubisoft announced that they were doing a remake of the Black Flag because I can hopefully be able to finally be able to play it and enjoy the game that a lot of my friends have enjoyed for so long. My general thoughts of this game is I love it. I think that this is definitely the pirate game that I've longed to play for the past 10 plus years, and finally being able to jump into this and realizing how good of a game this is finally for the first time, like in real earnest. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the character Edward Kenway. I fell in love with the crew of the ship and the fleet that you're building. I was enraptured with the story and everything that surrounded it. It was the old school AC that we come to know and love, but just with the modern abilities that we've seen in the modern Assassin's Creed games. It was kind of the perfect blending of the two, if you don't include Mirage, which I think is kind of a throwback to the old school AC, but with modern sort of still RPG kind of type settings. But with Black Flag, this is finally the first time that I can actually say that I fully enjoy this. It is also accessible, and I'll get to the accessibility in a minute, but I loved everything from the combat to the parkour to the ship combat to all the different missions you get to do. It truly did feel like that this was an open world that I could really, really enjoy. It's still clunky in areas that I think that probably, and this will kind of tie into the accessibility, but I felt that some of the parkour and including even some of the ship combat was a little clunky at times. And it definitely could use a little bit more of a polish, I think, even including in its accessibility. But I think that those are just minor nitpicks if you can still be able to enjoy the game as a whole. Now, I have not completed the game as of yet. I'm about 12-ish hours in right now of supposedly about 20 plus, which is, I think, a great time to be able to, amount of time to be able to complete this game. But obviously, there's a lot more hours you can put in with the open world, doing all the different side quests and missions you can be able to do in the Caribbean, essentially. So let's talk about the accessibility. I think that this is definitely in line with the most accessible games that Ubisoft can produce. We've seen their accessibility improve over the course of all of their games, but definitely in the sense of in the genre of open world games, Ubisoft is bar none probably the king or queen of the accessible open worlds currently. It's not perfect. It's still a lot of it's a bit of clunkiness somewhere in there, but even with, I kind of attribute some of the more clunkiness in this game as compared to a little bit more polished in other AC games, only because of some of the game design decisions that were made in back in earlier than 2015, 2013 when it came out, that essentially kind of conflict with the modern accessibility, because the game wasn't originally designed with accessibility in mind. Now, granted, it is a new engine. It is the same engine they've been using for all the recent AC games, but it is something that they wanted to be able to keep the team wanted to keep the original Black Flag intact, and sometimes some of those game design decisions kind of conflicted with the accessibility. But even with all that being said, the amount of accessibility that they were able to put in here definitely makes this a worth of a try for, I think, pretty much a lot of the accessibility spectrum from different types of disabilities. I'll talk about the deaf and hard of hearing aspect. There is obviously all the subtitle options that have become available in modern AC games. You have subtitle text size, background opacity, speaker tags, of voice direction, and also including emotion. I can't remember the emotion expressions that are basically describe how the character is reading that line for those players to know exactly how the tone of what the line is being said. And there are also captions for a lot of the sound effects that are available. And there's even including some, but not great, visual accessibility for deaf and hard hearing players to be able to know when attacks and stuff are happening off screen. It could be improved a bit better, but it definitely does help you when you are in combat, and you want to make sure that you can be able to see or see at least not necessarily hear. I was about to say hear, see the enemies that are about to be able to attack. The only thing that felt kind of off, that I felt that it was a missed opportunity, was whenever you're on your boat or on your ship, and a shanty would start, which it was a main staple of Black Flag back in 2013, and is definitely included in here. I wish that those songs were captioned, those lyrics were captioned. I don't know whether there was a copyright issue that they couldn't be able to caption those, but I would have loved to have been able to see that as a subtitles, because I feel like that is a core part of the game that just adds to the enjoyment of ship navigation that I felt that was missing for deaf and hard of hearing players. So hopefully maybe that could be something that could be released in a future update going forward. For motor disabled players, there is a lot of more clunkier controls with this, but you can be able to remap and adjust a lot of the settings that are available to you, including sensitivity, and including some taps to holds, and including some auto movement for for when you're moving. You can automatically move forward by just double tapping the X button, and you can even have certain times to be able to follow basic people, NPCs when you're following them in missions, and also including ship navigation, which I will get to in more detail for when I talk about blind and low vision. But essentially, I think for motor disabled players, I think the only clunkiness is again in the parkour and also in the complexity of ship combat. It is simplified. The ship combat is definitely simplified in a lot of sense, but it definitely there are times where you're trying to be able to, you want to be able to use your side cannons on your ship, and you're constantly having like switching to your front cannons or your barrels and behind in the after the shift. So it's like there's a lot of times that it kind of can potentially get in the way. And parkour, there were some times where I want to be able to, you know, jump to a different platform, and it sometimes would do a misdirect and jump to the right or to the left and not the direction of where you want it to go. There is the ability to be able to turn off sort of like the more complex parkour controls, and you can be able to do that set that in the settings, which I probably would recommend for most parkour opportunities. But there are going to be some missions that might be a bit difficult, like finding more song pages, which is a parkour type activity in order to be able to unlock more shanties for your ship. And that there are many times I would get frustrated trying to be able to unlock those shanties, just because of just the clunkiness of the parkour. Now let's talk about the blind accessibility. This is probably where I think the most improvement has been made in this for this game. there is menu narration pretty much throughout the entire game, not only in just the HUD, but in the in-game menus, and oftentimes it helps you to be able to navigate the open world or the open sea, as it were, with this game. I do find, though, that there are times where the narration kind of gets in the way of story dialogue, or in-game dialogue, I should say, and also sometimes even some of the cinematics. The narration can, what it does is that it sort of overlays on top of the in-game audio. Even if you lower the volume of the narration, it kind of ducks all other audio underneath it.
Where is Master Kid?
Andreas Island.
Hold triangle button to dock.
We're going
Hold
after
circle
the
button to release
plantation.
That depends.
completed. Raise the Black
Is the
Flag.
crew ready?
They are. Any sign of trouble, and they'll know what to do.
West. Chipper
We've
in
got your
materials.
back, Captain.
Which I understand why, because you want to make sure that the narration stands out so you can get the important information. But I felt at times I was missing a lot of the dialogue and a lot of the story information that's being given by talking to NPCs, because the narration would jump in and kind of override a lot of that. So unfortunately, I feel like that's probably been the most clunky of, I say the word clunky a lot in this episode, or in this review, but it is the most clunkiness of the whole thing. Now, I don't want anything really to change. I just wish there was ability to be able to change the ducking volume so that I could still hear the narration, but then I could also potentially still hear the dialogue, even with subtitles turned on. That obviously doesn't help like totally blind players, unfortunately. So. But unfortunately, like that's my kind of like main nitpick of the menu narration. Otherwise, it works great. It allows you to be able to navigate to waypoints, and also whenever you line up the waypoint into the center of the compass, the narration will read not only where that waypoint is, including custom waypoints that you set in your map, but also it tells you how far away that waypoint is.
45. Press circle button to dive. Press L3 button to sprint. Objective 39 meters.
And speaking of the map is, again, completely accessible. You can navigate the map with the cursor-based navigation, or you can basically hit a quest log, and you can actually be able to navigate basically each individual, like each mission or side quest that's already been unlocked for you, or you can be able to open up the legend, and you can be able to scroll through a menu-like system with narration.
Navigation to select. Legend. City. 1/1. Press R2. Coordinate. Jungle. 1/. Coordinate. Markers. 0/0.
To navigate where you want to go in the map. And once you set a marker, then that marker definitely will be read in the compass when you're trying to be able to make your way to that waypoint. Now that's how you can be able to navigate on land. When you're on the sea, that's a whole different sort of settings altogether. And I think that this is probably the most accessible way for blind players to actually be able to navigate a ship, not only navigation, but ship combat. You are constantly hearing your crewmates basically bellow out whenever there is a ship nearby, including if you're using your eyepiece, basically your telescope, in order to be able to look for ships that are off in the distance. If you do hover on a ship, your crew will tell you what type of ship it is and whether or not you are actually capable of taking on that ship.
Press L2 button. Press L2 button. Zoom in. Car, enemy. Break. Aurora. Difficult.
Which is great, but also if you want to be able to navigate from one waypoint to another across across the entire map by sea, what's really cool is you can actually be able to turn on the Pathfinder, which is a high contrast white line that leads you in the direction of where you want to go. You do that on the main on land as well. But what's cool about this on the sea is that you can be able to push and hold the triangle button to be able to follow that path. So that way you can just sit back, relax, and your ship is going to navigate to where you need to go, including when it stops, it slows down enough to be able to allow to bring up the prompt where you can be able to hold triangle at the dock, and you're at your waypoint. It is by far the best way to be able to navigate. Plus, you get to enjoy the shanties as your ship goes through the Caribbean and as carefree as possible. Yes, during combat, it can be a little bit clunky trying to be able to navigate where ships are and where you can be able to aim, where you need to aim in order to be able to take them down. I think that probably the more ships you add, the more complicated that can be. But there could be some gaps in there where you might need either sided assistance or might need a few tries in order to be able to kind of get it right. But there's enough accessibility there that I think overlaps each other that should fill in most of the gaps. May not be the best experience because, again, I think some of that of the original game design kind of comes in conflict here. But the Ubisoft did try as best they could to be able to try to make ship navigation and combat as accessible as possible. There are some missions that do require you to take down some ships, so unfortunately you can't just sort of navigate from point A to point B on your ship and not go into ship combat, so be prepared for that. But for the most part, they did try the best they could with that. Now, when it comes to combat or stealth, I think that actually that Ubisoft did a great job of being able to make that as accessible as well. There are sound effects, there are a menu narration for takedowns, including assassinations, which I'll get into for the stealth. But I feel that at times it probably, I would say probably maybe go on the easier difficulty in order to be able to allow you to be able to do combat a little bit easier. This is not a game where one enemy will attack you at a time. There are times where multiple enemies will attack. So you just have to kind of be prepared for being able to listen for the dodge sound effect or the parry sound effect as best as possible. It's a little bit too subtle, I think. I wish it was a little bit more overt and the audio cues could be able to pick up on that. I don't know if it just blends too much into the rest of the audio mix, but I did find it difficult at times to be able to listen for the sound effects for both of those. When it comes to stealth, they do have the Eagle Vision in here, and it includes basically the new version of Eagle Vision, which kind of creates a high contrast type mode when you are trying to be able to find where enemies are and items you can interact with. I do wish that you could be able to adjust the colors of those, because everything will turn into black and white except for enemies will be dark red, and whether places you can be able to hide or things you can interact with, they kind of are a little bit of light white / light gray, and can be hard to be able to see with everything kind of being a muted color and a muted background. I did wish that there was a little bit more high contrast in that, or at least options to be able to adjust the high contrast for that. It does help. It also enhances the audio, so you can be able to listen with directional sound as to where enemies are if they are near your vicinity, or the audio cues to be able to find like loot or chests to be able to open as well when you're in those stealth situations. I don't think that it's absolutely perfect, but again, I think it's just a lot of those settings will overlap. Basically experiment with it. Use the presets as much as possible when you're setting up the game for the first time. I think this is for in general, and you should be good for the most part of this. Overall, it may sound like that I'm nitpicking a little too much, and it may seem that this game isn't accessible. I assure you, honestly, this is definitely worth a recommend and a try, because there is a lot here and a lot of settings to be able to adjust to your best comfort level that I think could really, really help out and help you to be able to enjoy this game with hopefully minor nitpicks as far as some of the clunkiness of the original design that was for the game 15 plus years ago. So I think that as far as accessibility, again, Ubisoft has proven that they are definitely hitting their stride with making open world accessible, which is something that I've been hoping for in a lot of games for a long time. Some studios have been able to pick it up since then, but Ubisoft has proven that they're king and queens of the crop when it comes to open world accessibility. Is it perfect? No, but I think it's definitely you could see the improvement from game to game, even with going backwards with the remake of this. I think it still is definitely worth a pickup. So that is why for accessibility, I give Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced a 4 out of 5. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments about this review, please leave in the comment section down below. I'll try to be able to answer as best as I can, if I can. Also, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video or like this review, please give it a thumbs up, because the more thumbs up I can get, the more this goes in the YouTube algorithm and more can be shown to more people and help grow this channel. Speaking of growing this channel, please also hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed, so that you can be able to get more videos from me in the future. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. And as always, I remain obediently yours. Bye-bye.